Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for coming to this portion of the Leadership Academy. This portion is called Facilitating Effective Meetings. My name is Betsy Looney, and I'm the president of the Virginia Association of School Nurses. And with that role, I do have to have a lot of meetings. So some of the hints that we're going to discuss today to help you with meetings is that it's very important to have the skills and qualities of a facilitator. So it's important to respect all the participants and show a genuine interest in what each individual has to offer. Good listening skills include using questions to be able to understand everyone's viewpoint clearly. Have confidence in the ability of the group to work together and find solutions. Assertiveness, knowing when to intervene decisively and give some direction to the meeting. Paying attention to both the content of the discussion and the process. How are the people feeling? What exactly are the issues? What types of questions are being asked? And neutrality. You want to make sure that on the issues being discussed, trust in the facilitators is independent on the group, being sure that they are not deliberately or unconsciously manipulating the meeting towards a particular outcome. And then, so what that means is that sometimes meetings are held on Zoom, and that can be really difficult. And you'll have to engage your audience more and look at cues. Sometimes on a social media, when you're doing a Zoom meeting, as you may well know, it's hard to gauge how someone is feeling and if they're truly engaged. So in this part, we're going to discuss engaging the audience. So make eye contact. Even on Zoom, you can do that. You can look at that little green light if you can, and just to try to create a sense of intimacy and involvement. And ask everyone to please have their cameras on and have their names listed. That's very helpful. So if you want to call on someone, you can call on their name that they have on their screen. Try and keep the conversations on track to keep the meeting on time. Discourage disruptions and encourage positive interactions. Encourage questions. If facilitating the online meeting, use the chat feature to answer questions to avoid interruption. And make it clear that you will answer the questions. So generally what I do in the beginning of a meeting, I will say, if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them. However, please use the chat feature until the end of the meeting. And the reason is some of the questions that they may be asking, you might ask as the meeting goes on. So in order to facilitate it and to respect everyone's time, it's best to use that feature if you have a large audience. If it's a smaller audience and you're okay with them turning on their audio and discussing, then that's up to you. And you would make those criteria clear at the beginning of the meeting. So if you're doing live polls and if they are used to gather audience opinions, promote engagement and making sure audience feels involved. And I've done that both in an in-person meeting using live polls and on a Zoom meeting. And I was very surprised that even on the Zoom meeting, it really engaged everyone. And it was kind of exciting because we got to see people add comments also in the chat. And it was very nice to engage the audience that way. And that's a challenge when you're doing a Zoom meeting. If the meeting's online again, call on participants to unmute to answer a question. And if you notice that someone isn't really paying attention, sometimes what I'll do is I'll say, hey, Joe, what do you think of this? To get them more involved. So another thing that's very important before you have a meeting is to have a set agenda. So a detailed agenda helps the attendees prepare for the meeting. And there's a link on here that you can go on and it shows different ways how to prepare for a meeting. And to do this in advance. This way, your audience or your meeting members, your team members will know what you're going to discuss, and they can have their own perspectives and ideas to send to you ahead of time. And therefore, everyone knows what's going to be discussed and have questions and comments that they might have already developed before the meeting starts. And also during the meeting, an agenda helps the conversation focused. You lose less time on off-topic discussions because everyone knows what has to be covered. The bottom line is your agenda needs to be clear objectives and identify roles and what each person in the meeting. And I'll show that you further when I show you an agenda that I use for my meetings. And then work with the stakeholders and the key attendees. Sometimes some groups have a subcommittee, and you might ask them, like a board members, hey, we're going to be having a meeting. What would you like to add to this meeting? And so it's best in a team to have as much involvement as possible because you want everyone to feel like a valued member. And once your agenda is finalized, share it with everyone and so that they can prepare, as I said earlier. That way, if they have any comments or questions that they want to bring up at the meeting, they can know to do that ahead of time. Here's an example of an agenda. And as you can see, what I was discussing earlier is to have the roles. So for example, and we actually put the time in here. Like if the meeting starts at 7 o'clock, I'll have the secretary put 7. And then after that's done, she'll write 7:05. And this is done throughout the meeting because this way then I can gauge for the next meeting, oh, maybe we spent a little too much time on certain updates or certain items that maybe we need to spend less time next time, or show that information out earlier in the agenda to provide as much information as possible. So we go through, and in here, I didn't put the names of the people, but everyone knows the secretary's going to do the quorum to make sure who's here. We always take roll. The president's going to speak. You're going to have the adoption of the agenda. This is how we do it. We'll have executive meeting minutes, and then like a conference planning update. So then in this section, we will put notes, the person who spoke. And it's easy. This goes along. So the agenda, this is sent out ahead of time as to what we're going to speak. That way, the communication chair, for example, will know, okay, this is what I'm going to speak. We're going to talk about Instagram, and then we'll add all the other things that the communication chair has talked during the meeting. The secretary update, president, and we go down, and then on the next page, it goes on, continues. This meeting is an example of a meeting that might be 2 hours long. And these are like, we have executive meetings. We'll have a lot of people. We'll be on a Zoom meeting, and they will all have a chance to speak. We'll go down everyone. And then at the very end, before the meeting is to adjourn, we'll ask, does anyone have any questions or comments? And during the meeting, they'll still be able to use the chat feature. Now, if we're doing this meeting in person, each individual person will get up and they know ahead of time, hey, I'm going to be speaking after Ways and Means, or I'm going to be talking about a membership committee update. So each committee knows what is being expected of them ahead of time, and it makes the meeting go smoother and quicker. I know, how many times have you been on a meeting where it just gets off task and it goes in a whole totally different direction? I find that if you can make your agenda as concise, you stick to it, and you as a facilitator of the meeting will have to be cognizant of that and look at time and respect. I always say respect the people on the meeting because their time is valuable too. So it's best not to go off in tangents. And if there are areas that need to be discussed further, it's best to say, hey, we can have another meeting, and we'll put that on the agenda for next time. And that just keeps things going and lets everyone feel that they have input, which is extremely important because it's important to have a whole team and a whole engagement if possible. So let me see, I just went back and let's see, the slide that we just went over was just a recap of everything, and you'll have the slide deck that you can look at. These are some resources for you, and so let's just go back for a sec. So this just shows that the National Association of School Nurse Framework can be used to plan and evaluate for future meetings. And what I was mentioning is why I use that type of agenda and why we write things in during it, because I can go back and look at it and say, hey, I need to evaluate, how did this meeting go? Was the meeting an hour? Was it 2 hours? We told everyone we'd be 7 to 9 and we went to 9:30. I really try extraordinarily hard, if you're going to have a meeting, to keep it on time. And the reason for that is because then you're respecting their time. Your time's valuable, and it shows that you are following an agenda and being professional in your meetings. So, there, like I said, like I showed you earlier, were the resources for in-person and online meetings that hopefully can help you. And I just really want to tell you that you are great. And I can't thank you for all that you are doing as a leader in school nursing. And it just shows that you're part of this Leadership Academy, how much you care and you respect the field of nursing. And thank you so very much for your time. Good luck with your meetings. I know you'll do a great job. And enjoy the rest of your sections of the Leadership Academy. Thank you.